So this one is really interesting. I'm just going to read this gamesindustry.biz headline here, followed by its subheading. 4A Games Ukraine rebrands to Reburn, announces new IP. Okay, fair enough. And then the subheading is 4A Games itself has not rebranded, continues to work on the next game in the Metro series. But what we have got is a trailer for a new game called La Quimera, I think. And wow, this does look absolutely fantastic. Oliver, do you want to take up the story there?
Yeah, this is interesting. It's using the 4A games engine apparently. And when I was watching this trailer initially, I will admit I was just slotting it mentally into Unreal without even looking at the
Right.
visuals because I'm on autopilot so much with these UE5 releases nowadays that like a game that looks visually sophisticated that's being released in the future, certainly you think maybe it's UE5. But it'll be interesting to see what our techniques are here because obviously the 4A games engine has really well fully featured RTGI that looks quite good per pixel RTGI. And they are showing off this game at 30 FPS, which does seem like a bit of a statement of intent for possibly the console release. That tends to
Right.
be the case with a lot of these trailers when they do show it off at 30 FPS. That's kind of their main mode usually on the consoles here. I did note screen space reflections at a couple of points. Now
Yep.
the 4A engine does have ray traced reflections. Presumably that would not be part of the console spec. Maybe that's reading a little bit too finely here, but that's kind of what I'm possibly getting out of this trailer. But that's not a bad thing at all. I think this looks quite great. I think it looks very action oriented, unlike the Metro games, which are a little bit slower paced, more survival oriented, very analog. This looks a little bit faster, a little bit more digital, a little bit more modern, perhaps. And I would hope that this is not quite as scripted as some of those Metro titles as well. I'd hope it's a bit more flexible. And even though
Yes.
this is a story based single player primarily, it seems like first person shooter, which is actually something we don't see a ton of these days. Outside of the campaigns in like the Call of Duty series, we don't see a ton of that. I'd hope that this is a game that is a little bit more flexible and maybe a little bit more open-ended than those titles. That'd be something that would be on my wish list personally. As someone who doesn't really connect necessarily with those Metro titles as much, I'd hope this is a little bit fast and a little bit more fun in those respects. But yeah, this is just a brief tease. But certainly what they're showing off here looks pretty polished, pretty good. And it looks interesting and quite compelling here. I think they're hitting all the right notes in this early trailer.
Yeah, John, I was getting some Killzone vibes from this. I don't know what you think.
A little bit. I can see what you mean. Especially it's that combination of like all the mechanical electronic armor combined with the sort of like dark setting. And they do a lot of similar visual techniques that we saw in Killzone, which is cool. So one of the things that really interests me though is that it's set in, they say, a dystopian Latin America in the future. And from this trailer as well, you can see the scenery actually does seem somewhat interesting and different. There's a type of flora and fauna and just designs going on here that could be quite compelling. Like right at the beginning, the trailer starts in that rainstorm with all the moving plants that are very reminiscent of that sort of region of the world, like just moving and changing with the weather. And yeah, I can kind of see the Killzone stuff, especially when you have the guys walking through that rainstorm with all the little lights on their suit,
Yeah.
which always sticks out with me. That was one of their favorite things to talk about with deferred rendering back on Killzone 2. Is like, yeah, now all these little lights actually project real light thanks to deferred rendering. I was like, whoa, really? That's amazing. I am happy to see that it does seem somewhat more action based as well. Like Oliver, I like the Metro titles, but I don't love them. And actually a big part of that comes down to they placed far too much attention on talking heads, where you'd have these characters that I generally didn't find appealing or interesting. And they would essentially force the player to stand in a small area and listen to people talk. Artyom, do this, Artyom, and you can't sit, it's a silent protagonist, but unlike say Half-Life, they just go on and on and on and on. And I enjoy stories and games, but I just could never get into the characters in that series in a way. Like it was too much. So there is a little bit of that shown here in this trailer, but I feel like a lot of the other stuff maybe hints at something that's a little bit more faster paced. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm still just kind of tickled by this whole concept that, 4A games rebranded then didn't rebrand. Um, we got this. It actually caused 4A Games to put out their own statement. Congratulations to our Ukrainian brothers and sisters at Reburn on the announcement of La Quimera, some of whom are former colleagues. For clarity, we have not rebranded or changed in any way. The same founders and beating heart of the Retro series continue to work on the next Retro game from our studios in Ukraine, Malta, and remotely. We are also still at work on our other new IP, as referenced in previous studio updates. We can't wait to celebrate Metro's 15th birthday with all of you in March. So, yeah, I'm interested to see what they've got coming up on that for sure. Clearly there is some sort of collaboration, certainly at the engine level, if the 4A engine is being used for this game from a studio that seemingly isn't 4A Games Ukraine. But what can I say? I'm sure the confusion will all be sorted imminently, and look forward to seeing.
By the way,
4A.
if you guys remember, there was a Metro game released last year. Metro
the VR one.
Metro Awakening for VR, and I did play a chunk of that. It has the same problem with people just talking like crazy, which was annoying, but which is especially annoying in VR. But I have to say the actual core gameplay was really pretty compelling and impressive. So it borrowed that same sort of like, I guess you could say the Half-Life Alyx-ish as just shorthand for the sort of like the free form. You have both hands holding weapons, interacting with the environment kind of stuff. But what impressed me the most is that they had a very compelling version on Quest 3 by itself, which looked impressively good. And it was not a 4A developed game, I don't believe, and I don't believe it was using actual 4A's engine either. I think
it was Unreal, wasn't it?
I think you're right. I think it was Unreal because it had a very long shader compilation step on Quest 3, which Unreal games tend to have on that platform. So,
wow. Can't they ship shaders? There's several
right?
quests, right?
I've actually always wondered this as well, and I'm not entirely sure why that's the case. But yeah, on Quest, you do have games with shader compilation steps. Okay. So
bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay. I bet that does wonders for battery life, just running the CPU flat out.
There's been some Unreal games where you start it up and you're just like sitting in this blank VR environment with like a little load bar for like 20 minutes. You just kind of like,
oh no.
And you know that if you put the headset down and it goes to sleep, it's going to probably stop doing the shader compilation. So you either have to stand there or you put a piece of tape over the sensor so it just keeps going.